As a neighbor barged in, demanding explanations, officers arrived shortly after, but not for the reason she assumed. Sharon inhaled deeply as the sun dipped beneath the treetops, bathing the water in a golden hue. The boutique rental estate, a sanctuary she had devoted nearly a decade to, reflected the fading daylight. Every evening, she followed a routine, checking chlorine levels, tidying up lounge chairs, and securing the gates. Visitors sought serenity here, and she ensured they experienced it. This wasn't merely a business. It symbolized years of dedication. She recalled the struggle, securing a loan, battling for permits, and managing upkeep alone when finances were tight. Yet, every hardship paid off. The estate flourished, drawing elite clientele who valued its exclusivity. Adjusting the latch on the gate, she turned to leave when a voice called out, "Excuse me, what do you think you're doing?" Pausing, Sharon already sensed the direction this was heading. She faced a woman in her 50s, arms folded, stationed at the property's boundary. Her chin lifted, eyes squinting, as though Sharon was a puzzle she couldn't decipher. "I'm closing the pool," Sharon stated evenly. The woman stepped forward, gaze sharpening. "You work here?" Sharon observed her momentarily. She understood the implication, but had no patience for games. "I own this estate," she replied firmly. The woman blinked, struggling to process the statement before scoffing. "Oh, really?" she sneered. "That's interesting because I know the owner." Sharon tilted her head. "Do you?" "Yes," the woman asserted. "This is a luxury rental. I doubt the owner would approve of some stranger securing things." Exhaling slowly, Sharon willed herself to remain composed. "I am the owner, Sharon Matthews. I purchased this property in 2014, but the woman wasn't listening. Her phone was already in hand. "You need to leave," she declared. "I'm calling the authorities." Sharon let out a humorless chuckle. "You're reporting me on my own estate?" "Exactly. If you truly own it, proving it won't be an issue when they arrive." And with that, she hit the call button. Sharon knew this wasn't about verification. It never was. Arms folded, she watched as the woman paced, phone pressed to her ear. "Yes, I need officers at Lakeview Estate," the woman said urgently. "Someone's trespassing, locking the pool as if it's hers." She gestured dramatically, narrating an apparent crime. Sharon caught the dispatcher's muffled response, already anticipating the script. The woman's confidence wavered. "No, I don't know her name," she admitted. "But she won't leave." Sharon inhaled deeply, shoulders relaxing. Encounters like this were all too familiar. Assumptions, interrogations, baseless policing. But this felt different. Turning back, the woman's eyes gleamed with misplaced authority. "The police are on their way," she declared, slipping the device into her pocket. "I'd advise you to stay put." Raising a brow, Sharon responded, "Oh, I'm not going anywhere." The woman blinked, thrown by Sharon's unwavering stance. "Good," she snapped, "because when they arrive, you'll have a lot to answer for." Sharon sighed, glancing at the luxury villas. Some guests lounged on patios, sipping wine, observing the spectacle. A couple exchanged glances, intrigued by the scene. "Let me clarify," Sharon said, locking eyes with the woman. "You saw a black woman closing a pool and, without a single follow-up question, assumed I had no right to be here." The woman's lips curled. "Oh, don't play the race card." Sharon smirked. "I don't need to. You did that all by yourself." The woman's face darkened. "I don't know what kind of scheme you're running, but I know someone else owns this property. I've lived here for 10 years. I know who belongs." Sharon chuckled softly. "Oh, then tell me, what's my name?" The woman hesitated. "What? My name? If you know the owner, you should know my name." Her lips parted, but silence followed. Sharon stepped closer, voice low. "You don't, do you? Because you don't know who owns this place. You just assume someone like me couldn't possibly be." The woman stiffened. "You're twisting my words." Sharon shook her head. "No, I'm repeating them exactly as you said." The woman shifted uneasily, glancing toward the road. Maybe she realized her misstep. Maybe not. But before she could respond, sirens cut through the evening air. Sharon exhaled. This was about to get interesting. Blue and red lights flickered against the estate as two patrol vehicles pulled up near the main gate. Sharon remained where she stood, arms at ease, while the woman, who still hadn't introduced herself, squared her shoulders and strode toward the officers like she had summoned backup. The first officer emerged, a tall man with sharp features and a firm expression. His partner, shorter but muscular, followed, scanning the area. The woman wasted no time. Officers, thank goodness you're here. She motioned toward Sharon, as if identifying an intruder. She was shutting down the pool, pretending to be in charge. I told her to leave, but she refused. Sharon released a slow breath. Here we go. The lead officer turned toward her. Ma'am, do you live here? No. Sharon replied evenly. I own this estate. The woman let out a harsh laugh. No, she does not. The officer studied them both before returning his focus to Sharon. Do you have identification or proof of ownership? Nodding, she reached into her pocket. Slowly. Sudden movements weren't wise in situations like this. Pulling out her wallet, she handed over her driver's license. I also have property documents inside, she offered. I can retrieve them if needed. The officer examined her ID before turning to the woman. Ma'am, what's your connection to this estate? The woman hesitated. I live nearby. I've seen the real owner before, and I know it's not her. The officer's expression didn't change. He simply turned back to Sharon. Miss Matthews, can you explain what happened? Sharon folded her arms. I was securing my pool, like I do every night, when she gestured toward the woman, decided I didn't belong and called you. The officer remained expressionless, though something shifted in his gaze. He studied Sharon again, his eyes lingering a second longer. Then, unexpectedly, his expression changed. Wait a minute. He squinted at her ID again. His partner leaned in for a look before raising a brow. Sharon Matthews, the first officer repeated, as if confirming it to himself. Then, suddenly, his stance softened, recognition flashing across his face. Oh man, he muttered, shaking his head. I know you. The woman froze. What? Sharon lifted a brow. Do you? Yeah. The officer returned her ID, a faint smile appearing. You were in the news a while back. Didn't you run that outreach program in Oakland? Sharon tilted her head, amusement creeping in. Depends. Which ones? He chuckled. The scholarship initiative. My cousin's kid got a grant through it, Sharon smiled. Small world. The woman's mouth opened and closed, her confidence cracking just a little. But the officer wasn't done. He turned back to her, expression unreadable. And you said she was trespassing. The woman faltered. I thought she was. You thought? His voice remained calm, but firm. Did you ask her any questions before calling us? The woman swallowed hard. But it was clear now. She had lost control of the situation. Her once defiant posture had crumbled. Arms that had been crossed in certainty now hung stiff at her sides. Her eyes darted between Sharon and the officer, searching for a way out, some justification for what she had done. The officer kept his attention locked on her. You called us about a trespasser, he said slowly, but you never actually checked if she belonged here. The woman's mouth opened, then closed. I assumed. And that, Sharon interrupted, folding her arms, is the problem. You assumed. The woman let out a nervous breath. I just thought. No. Sharon cut in. You didn't think. You didn't ask. You didn't verify. You just saw me. And that was enough. The second officer, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. Ma'am, did she ever threaten you? The woman hesitated. No. Did she refuse to leave your property? Another pause. Well, no. Then why exactly did you feel the need to call the police? The woman's face burned red. I thought I was helping. If she wasn't supposed to be here. Sharon let out a humorless chuckle. You were so sure I wasn't supposed to be here that you had no problem calling the cops on me. The first officer sighed, exchanged a glance with his partner, then shook his head. This isn't a police matter. Miss Matthews owns this property. No crime, no trespassing, nothing to investigate. The woman swallowed. I see that now. Sharon narrowed her eyes. Do you? The woman looked like she wanted to say something else, but no words came. The realization of what she had done, how wrong she had been, settled in. The officer turned to Sharon. Miss Matthews, I apologize for the inconvenience. Sharon exhaled slowly and nodded. I appreciate that. He hesitated, then added, and I just want to say, your work really made a difference for a lot of people. I'm sorry you had to deal with this tonight. The woman's head snapped toward him. Wait. She's the Sharon Matthews. The second officer let out a quiet chuckle. Yep. Sharon watched the woman's face as the truth hit her. Whatever she had assumed, that Sharon was some stranger sneaking around an upscale estate, that she couldn't possibly own a place like this, had just shattered. But the damage was already done. And now, she had to sit with the consequences. The silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. The woman, who had been so sure of herself just minutes ago, now looked like she wanted the ground to swallow her whole. Sharon could see it in her eyes, that slow, creeping realization, that she had made a fool of herself, that she had humiliated herself, not Sharon. The woman's voice was quieter now. I didn't know. Sharon tilted her head. Didn't know what? The woman fidgeted. I didn't know you were you. Sharon let out a sharp laugh. Oh? So if I were just some random woman, you'd still think I didn't belong? The woman pressed her lips together. That's not what I meant. Sharon's voice was steady, but there was an edge to it now. It's exactly what you meant. She took a slow step forward. Let me guess. You assumed the owner would be someone else. Someone who looked different than me. The woman swallowed hard, said nothing. The first officer crossed his arms. You know, Miss Matthews could file a false report complaint against you for this. The woman's eyes widened. I wasn't trying to cause trouble. The second officer shook his head. You wasted our time because you didn't take 5 seconds to ask a question before calling us. The woman's cheeks flushed deep red. I didn't think. Sharon raised a brow. That much is clear. Around them, guests from the estate were still watching from their balconies, whispering. A couple near the pool had their phones out, possibly recording. The woman had made a spectacle of herself. And now, she was at the center of it. Sharon sighed, shaking her head. You came here with so much certainty, and now you can't even look me in the eye. The woman glanced toward the patrol cars, like she was searching for an escape. But there wasn't one. Sharon inhaled deeply, forcing herself to release the tension building in her chest. This woman had already taken up too much of her time. She turned to the officers. Are we done here? The first officer nodded. Unless you want to file a complaint. Sharon studied the woman for a long moment, then exhaled sharply. No. She already embarrassed herself enough tonight. The woman flinched. Sharon turned, heading toward her estate. But before she stepped inside, she called over her shoulder, just loud enough for everyone to hear. Next time, think before you pick up the phone. And with that, the night was over. The air outside felt different now, heavier, charged, the kind of energy that lingers after a storm. The officers returned to their cars, their radios crackling as another call came through. With one last glance toward Sharon, the lead officer gave her a respectful nod before sliding into the driver's seat. She didn't return it. She was too tired for pleasantries. The woman, who still hadn't offered her name, stood there, shoulders tense, eyes darting between the retreating patrol cars and the few guests still watching from their balconies. The very people she had likely wanted to impress were now staring at her like she was the problem. Because she was. She shifted uncomfortably, as if searching for a way to fix this, to save face. But what could she possibly say now? Sharon didn't wait for an apology that wasn't coming. She turned on her heel and walked toward her front door. Wait the woman blurted. Sharon stopped but didn't turn around. The woman hesitated, then sighed. I made a mistake. Sharon exhaled through her nose, gripping the doorknob. You did. Another pause. I just thought. The woman trailed off, realizing how hollow her excuses sounded. I didn't mean. Didn't mean what? Sharon finally turned to face her. Didn't mean to call the cops on me, she challenged. Didn't mean to assume I was trespassing on my own damn property. The woman flinched at Sharon's sharp tone. I was just trying to look out for the neighborhood, she murmured weakly. Sharon allowed a bitter laugh. Were you? Or were you just trying to make sure someone like me knew their place? The woman's face twisted, but she didn't deny it. That's what I thought, Sharon muttered. Go home. The woman lingered a second longer, as if still hoping to salvage something. But there was nothing left to say. Defeated, she turned and disappeared into the shadows of the neighborhood she thought she was protecting. Sharon stood in the doorway for a long moment, letting the night settle around her. The anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface. But she wouldn't let it consume her. She had worked too damn hard to let a stranger's ignorance steal her peace. And tonight, that peace was hers to reclaim. She stepped inside and shut the door. This is the story of a woman, Sharon Matthews, who becomes the victim of a neighbor's assumptions on her own property. While Sharon is closing her pool, a stranger grows suspicious and, without any verification, calls the police. When the police arrive, the officers initially share some doubt. However, as soon as Sharon presents her identification and property documents, the truth becomes clear. One officer recognizes Sharon and recalls how her community outreach program has helped countless people. Meanwhile, the woman who assumed Sharon was an outsider begins to realize her mistake. At first, she refuses to admit her fault, but when the police question whether Sharon had threatened her or trespassed on her property, she has no answer. The officers dismiss the entire situation as a misunderstanding and explain to the caller how dangerous it is to make such baseless assumptions. Sharon, who has faced such situations before, refuses to let anger consume her. She declines to file any complaint because she knows the woman has already embarrassed herself enough. Before leaving, she simply says, "Think twice before picking up the phone next time." The next day, the entire incident goes viral. People watch the video and share their opinions. Some express outrage, others show support, and some relate it to their own experiences. Sharon's assistant calls to inform her that a news channel wants to interview her, but Sharon has no interest in getting involved. She believes the video speaks for itself. This is not just Sharon's story. It is the story of all those who constantly have to prove they belong, simply because of their identity or appearance. It serves as a reminder that assumptions can have consequences, and we should all take a moment to reflect before acting on them.